Once upon a time, in a quiet village hidden deep within the African savanna, there lived a woman named Adena. She was beautiful, charming, and seemed to have an unexplainable air of wealth around her. Her home was the largest in the village, adorned with expensive jewelry, luxurious fabrics, and golden treasures that no one else could afford. Despite her fortune, no one knew how she had come into so much wealth, as Adena had no family, no business, and no husband to provide for her. Every market day she would walk through the village, her head held high, draped in fine silk, while others wore simple, tattered clothes. The villagers admired her outwardly, but deep down they were suspicious. Whispers followed her wherever she went. Some said she was a witch, others believed she had made a dark pact with spirits. But Adena remained silent, carrying herself with an eerie grace, never explaining her riches. Despite the rumors, people could not help but seek her favor. They visited her often, bringing small gifts, hoping to gain a piece of her good fortune. Adena would smile, accept their offerings, and then send them on their way. She never gave anything in return, only silent nods and smiles, leaving the villagers even more curious about the source of her wealth. One day, a young man named Kofi arrived in the village. He had heard of Adena's fortune and decided to work for her, hoping to learn her secrets. Kofi was ambitious and clever. He presented himself as a humble servant, offering to tend to her garden, clean her house, and take care of her affairs. Adena, seeing potential in the young man, accepted his offer with a knowing smile. Weeks turned into months, and Kofi worked diligently for Adena, but she never let him get too close. She would often lock herself in her room for days, only emerging after dark. Kofi noticed strange occurrences in the house, unseen footsteps in the hallways, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, and an unsettling chill that filled the air at night. Despite these strange happenings, Kofi was determined to uncover the truth. One night, while Adena was away, Kofi decided to explore her house more thoroughly. He crept into the forbidden part of the house where she kept her wealth, a room that was always locked. To his surprise, the door was slightly ajar. His heart raced as he stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of incense and something darker, something rotten. Inside the room he found shelves filled with gold coins, gemstones, and rare artifacts from distant lands. But in the corner something caught his eye, a large ancient chest covered in strange markings. Kofi approached it cautiously, and as he opened it, his stomach turned. Inside were the skeletal remains of a man, his bones tangled in old chains. Kofi's breath caught in his throat as he realized this was no ordinary chest. It was a tomb. Fear gripped him, but curiosity kept him rooted to the spot. At the bottom of the chest there was a small blood-stained scroll. Shaking, Kofi opened it, revealing a message written in a language he barely understood. But one phrase stood out, a curse that sent chills down his spine. The secrets of wealth come with a price, and those who take must pay with life. Before Kofi could react, a sudden noise echoed through the house. The door creaked open, and there stood Adena, her face twisted in fury. "You shouldn't have come here," she hissed, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "You've seen what you were never meant to see." Kofi tried to stammer an apology, but Adena's voice cut through the air like a knife. "This is my secret, the one I have carried for years. My wealth is built on death, on a bargain made with spirits long forgotten." She stepped closer, her voice turning cold. "Now you must pay the price." The air grew thick with tension as the room darkened. Shadows seemed to crawl across the floor, wrapping around Kofi's legs, freezing him in place. Adena whispered a spell, her hands moving in strange, unnatural gestures. In an instant, the chest closed with a deafening thud, and the bones inside seemed to stir, as if the spirit of the dead man was awakening. Kofi's heart raced as he realized that Adena had been offering lives in exchange for her wealth. Every time someone vanished from the village, it was because they had crossed her path. The bones in the chest belonged to those who had tried to uncover her secret just like he had. Suddenly the room fell silent. Adena turned to Kofi, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I wasn't always like this," she said quietly. "I once loved a man. We were happy, but he was taken from me by the spirits. In my grief, I made a deal with them. eternal wealth in exchange for his life and the lives of those who dared to interfere. Tears filled her eyes, but her voice remained steady. But now you've seen too much. And the spirits demand another offering. Before Kofi could react, the shadows tightened around him, dragging him toward the chest. Adena watched with sad, knowing eyes as Kofi was pulled inside. The lid slammed shut and the room fell into a deadly silence once again. The next morning, the villagers noticed that Kofi had disappeared. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some said he had run away, but others believed something far darker had happened. The villagers were suspicious, but none dared confront Adena directly. They knew better than to challenge the woman who carried so many secrets. But one woman, an elder named Alma, was not afraid. Alma had seen many things in her life and had always suspected that Adena's wealth came from something unnatural. Alma gathered a small group of trusted villagers and told them of her plan. Adena's secret must be buried, she said. We will put an end to this curse once and for all. That night, while Adena was asleep, Alma and the villagers crept into her house. They found the chest that Kofi had opened, but instead of wealth they found bones. Dozens of skeletons, each one marked with a symbol of death. Horrified, the villagers realized the truth. Adena's wealth was built on the lives of those she had sacrificed. Without hesitation, they dragged Adena from her bed and took her to the village square. She screamed and begged for mercy, but the villagers were unmoved. Alma stood before her, holding a shovel in her hand. You've carried these dark secrets for too long, she said. Now you will carry them to your grave. The villagers dug a deep hole in the ground and threw Adena into it. She wept and cursed them as they began to bury her alive, but no one listened. The ground swallowed her screams and soon, there was nothing but silence. Days passed and the village seemed to return to normal. But every night the wind carried whispers, faint echoes of Adena's voice, calling out from beneath the earth. The villagers said she was trying to escape, but no one dared to disturb her grave. Over time, the whispers grew fainter until one day they stopped altogether. The village was peaceful again, but the story of Adena was never forgotten. Parents told their children the tale as a warning. Secrets, no matter how deeply buried, always come to light. And in the quiet of the night, if you listened closely, you could still hear the faint sound of digging, as if someone was trying to claw their way back to the surface.